Hi friends, welcome to today's class. So today's question is, the girls in the three classes are in the ratio 2:3:5. If 20 students are increased in each class, the ratio changes to 4:5:7. What are the total number of girls in the three classes before the increase? So whenever an initial ratio and final ratio are given, you can apply the method as explained in the previous video. So initial ratio is equal to 2:3:5. So this is the initial ratio of the girls in three classes, and your final ratio is 4:5:7. And this ratio change is brought about by adding 20 students to each class. So 20 students are added in each class. So your final ratio becomes 4:5:7 from the initial ratio 2:3:5. So what is the first step? You have to make the difference same. So here there are three terms. So you have to check the difference. The difference between 4 and 5 is 1. The difference between 5 and 7 is 2. Here if you see, the difference between 2 and 3 is 1. The difference between 3 and 5 is 2. So the difference is same only. So in both the cases, in both the ratios, for initial ratio and the final ratio, your difference is same. The difference between 2 and 3 and the difference between 3 and 5. In the same way, in the final ratio, the difference between 4 and 5 and the difference between 5 and 7 is same only. So you need not change anything. The difference is same. So now how it is brought about? 2 plus 2 and 3 plus 2 and 5 plus 2. So when you are adding 2 only, you will be getting the final ratio from the initial ratio. So this 2 is equivalent to 20. This 2 is equivalent to 20 means 1 will be equivalent to 10. So before the increase, how many girls were there in each class? 20 girls, 2 into 10, 3 into 10 and 5 into 10. So it will be 20, 30 and 50. So what is the total? Total number of girls is equal to 50 plus 30 plus 20, which gives you 100. So 100 is your answer. So within seconds you will be able to find out your answer. Question number 2. The incomes of Sanju and Preeti are in the ratio 8:11 and their expenditures in the ratio 7:10. If each of them saves rupees 500, what are their incomes and expenditures? So here also you can tell the incomes ratio is given and the expenditures ratio is given. Income minus expenditure is equal to savings. So you can say the initial ratio is the income. The ratio between the incomes is your initial ratio and your final ratio is the ratio between the expenditures after savings. If you are subtracting savings from the income, you will be getting the expenditures. Also, I am just writing here the incomes ratio is equal to 8:11 and your expenditures ratio is equal to 7:10. So your initial ratio is equal to 8:11 and your final ratio is equal to 7:10. You are saving in between. When you are subtracting, in the previous questions we saw something is added to the initial ratio in order to get the final ratio. Here the only difference is something is subtracted from the initial ratio in order to get the final ratio. In both the cases you can use the same method. There is no problem at all. Even if subtraction or addition is done, the method adopted will be same. So what is the method? You have to find out the difference between the antecedent and the consequent in both the initial ratio and the final ratio. In the final ratio expenditures, what is the difference between antecedent and consequent? 10 minus 7 is equal to 3. And for your incomes, what is the difference? 11 minus 8 is equal to 3. So both are same, no problem. So the difference between the antecedent and consequent is same in both the initial ratio and the final ratio. So no need of any conversion there. So now let's go to the next step. So next step, what is happening? How do we get from initial ratio, the final ratio, how do we get? Minus 1. 8 minus 1 is equal to 7 and 11 minus 1 is equal to 10. This 1 is equivalent to 500. It is telling each of them is saving rupees 500. So only minus 500. Income minus 500 will be giving you the expenditure, and the second income also minus 500 will be giving you the second expenditure. So minus 1 is equal to minus 500. Savings is you have to subtract from income. So minus will come. So minus 1 is equivalent to minus 500 or 1 is equivalent to 500. So what is your income? Your income will be equal to 8 into 500 and 11 into 500. And what will be your expenditure? 7 into 500 and 10 into 500. So you will be getting your incomes and your expenditures as simple as that. So what are your incomes? Incomes of Sanju and Preeti will be equal to 4,000 and 5,500. And what about expenditures? Expenditures will be equal to 3,500 and 5,000. So each one will be saving 500 each. So income minus savings is equal to expenditure. So initial ratio minus when 500 is subtracted from each term, you will be getting the final ratio. So from using that concept, you can use the same method in order to find out the incomes and expenditures. The ratio of the incomes of A and B is 3:4. The ratio of their expenditures is 5:7. If each of them saves rupees 200, find the incomes of both. So incomes ratio are given 3:4 and expenditures ratio are given 5:7. So income minus savings is equal to expenditure. So savings is 200. So income minus 200. You have to subtract 200 from each term in order to get the final ratio. Your initial ratio is 3:4 and final ratio is 5:7. Your income will be your initial ratio and your expenditures will be your final ratio. So what is the first step? You have to find out the difference between the antecedent and the consequent in both the initial ratio and the final ratio. So what will be your difference here? Difference between the antecedent and consequent is equal to 7 minus 5 is equal to 2. In your incomes, what is the difference? 4 minus 3 is equal to 1. The difference is not same. So your first step is to convert the difference between the antecedent and the consequent as 2 in the incomes, or in the initial ratio also you have to make the difference as 2. So you have to multiply each term with 2. So 6:8 is the initial ratio and 5:7 is your final ratio. So every time the difference between the antecedent and the consequent should be same in both the initial ratio and the final ratio. So 6:8 and 5:7. So 6 minus 1 and 8 minus 1 is equal to 7. 6 minus 1 is equal to 5. So minus 1 is equivalent to minus 200. Each one is saving 200. That means income minus 200 will be giving you the expenditure. So minus 1 is equivalent to minus 200 or 1 is equivalent to 200. So what are the incomes? 3 into 200 and 4 into 200. So the incomes of A and B are 600 and 800. 200. You have to multiply here, okay. So you have to multiply here only. With 6:8 only you have to multiply. So your answer will be 6 into 200 and 8 into, so it will be equal to 1200 and 1600. So these will be your incomes. Your initial ratio has changed to 6:8. So you have to multiply with 6 into 200 and 8 into 200, or 1200 and 1600 will be the incomes of A and B respectively. Thank you for watching.